Welcome to the Beautiful Step Podcast,
where we
run,
stomp,
tiptoe,
and tango into the confusing
but beautiful
world of togetherness. We are your hosts, Kris
and Charity.
Now, let's go make our together even better. Do men play harder than women?
Mm-hmm.
I think we each can attribute a word to what we're talking about. I think men play, and I think women rest. Is that way off? Is that so
off? Are they
off?
the same thing?
And that's why I'm like, maybe I'm trying to genderify the words too much, but I think that when we're talking about what we have to do to balance our life, like if we're working really hard,
the work-rest balance,
work-play balance, it's what am I going to do to feel like I can go back to work? I have the energy. I have something to give. I feel creative. I feel productive. I like jump out of bed and I'm ready to rock. For me, I call it play.
Right. And I would call it probably rest, because I'm literally like, if you were asking what we want to do in those times that we have, you'll go like make a bag and like walk around in the shop, and I'll be like, can I just sit down and watch a chick flick for a couple hours and like turn my brain off?
Right.
Which I would call rest, but it's
play.
It's my version of play.
It's play. Reading a book is play. You reading or watching a movie is play. You know, you doing these types of things that have a more sedentary vibe to them.
Yeah.
Is still play in my mind because it's non-essential.
Right.
It's like I'm not making money so I can eat.
Yes. So this is the thing about rest. So let's just say, okay. let's make a standard that rest and play are the same thing.
Let's just say that. Okay.
Just different vibes. They might look different on a continuum, whatever you want to call it.
Right. Very restful for me to go make a bag.
Yes. It's same category.
Very playful.
Right. The opposite of work.
Right.
Essentially.
Yes. Opposite of work. Yes.
So there's this thing about rest that's so needed. And I think this is getting a lot of play in the media and everything. Our awareness is really keen to how important sleep is, how important rest is. Like we did a podcast on sleep, which I thought was a lot of good information. Sure. And then, but people are focusing in on like balanced life, rest. Mm-hmm. And part of this is, I've always been intrigued, like biblical times, they would let the land rest for the seventh year, all these kind of things to reset.
Right. I mean, come on. God worked for 6 days. We're talking about Western, theology. Yeah. God worked for 6 days and then he rested.
Right. According to creation. Right.
God rested.
And you look at that and you're like, okay, well, that's because, the reason you let the land rest. And even now, I mean, the federal government subsidizes land resting.
Aunt Barb.
Right.
Because Aunt Barb has land in, I can't remember what they call it, but where it's rejuvenating.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is the point, is that you let it rest so that it can rebuild all its nutrients.
Absolutely.
And all that stuff before you plant again. So it's a necessary thing biologically in humans.
You have to have rest.
Right.
Or you have to have play. You have to have rejuvenation.
Yes, they both are rejuvenated.
Rejuvenationated.
I don't even know. Rejuvenating.
Yes, I love it.
Okay.
Or they're juvenating. I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Are they juvenating or rejuvenating?
We all know what they mean or what we mean. Everyone knows what we mean. Go.
Okay. So it's rejuvenating.
Yes. To rest, to play. You're doing what it takes to rejuvenate. You have to do what it takes to rejuvenate. And here's the thing that I think oftentimes people don't really understand. And I didn't understand for the longest time. I kept thinking, sleep is rest.
Okay.
Which it is. It's a form of rest. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to, obviously, when we started talking about like, hey, what do we have on rest? Like when we start talking about rest and work hard, play hard, I went and listened to a podcast. And I was listening to, and I don't know if we can link it or whatever. I liked it. I liked the podcast. It's just I realized that this lady doing the podcast and I have pretty different worldviews, and we kind of operate in different ways. And what her comment is your rest is giving your body what you need in order to feel rejuvenated.
Okay.
And here's my thing is I'm like, yes, that's restful. But to me, that means sleep, right?
Because it's a body thing?
Because it's a body thing. It's a biological thing. And her comment was, if I go snowboarding instead of going to work, somehow my body feels rejuvenated and ready for the next day. And I would just kind of raise my hand and go, okay, here's what I know about the human condition is that, especially studying religion, you're going to find out really quickly that the body is only a very small part of what makes up the human existence.
Sure.
It's a very effective part, and it's a part that is essential to all the other parts. But it's not the only thing that we focus on as human beings, or we should focus on. And I love Maureen Christensen, bless her, taught me, and she's a therapist, taught me that we're Pepsi people. We're not just body.
Okay, what is Pepsi?
Okay, thank you. We are physical, we are emotional, we are psychological, we are spiritual, and we are intellectual. And every one of those has virtue that comes out.
Sure.
Your body, like it's, if I'm on a roof, my body is tired and I have to either play accordingly or rest accordingly, right? If you and I fight emotionally, I am literally drained.
Yeah.
Right. Spiritually, if I'm doing nothing bigger than myself ever, I wear that part of myself out. I have to connect to a bigger, idea psychologically, on and on.
Yeah.
So I guess that is such a key to me to start to figure out, wait, I don't know that I'm physically tired. I might just be emotionally drained. Right.
Which requires a different kind of rest. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And that's what I'm kind of getting at is like, it's a little bit presumptuous to think that if I do something with my body, I'll feel better the next day.
Yeah. It
doesn't necessarily add up.
Right.
And here's how I learned this is I started to, it was actually when my mom died. This was a huge download where I was asking myself, like, why is it hard for me to do normal things right now? Like, I can't even really just do the thing that I do every day, like cook or something. And you'll find that when people are in trauma or where there's a death in the family, there will be a meal train. People will bring food over and stuff like that. And I think we intuitively know it. You don't get tired from how long things take. Oftentimes you get tired from how much they weigh.
Right. And how much mental capacity they're taking.
Like how much psychologically you're doing in your brain when someone passes or there's trauma, or how much emotional energy you're just grinding on, right?
Yeah.
And you're literally wearing yourself out and you have to somehow rest from that.
Yeah. It's this, I read recently, which is a great book, Effortless by Greg McKeown. And it's a great book.
Yeah.
And he talks about kind of like efficiencies and this idea of rest, work, balance, and how to do things better so that you actually get to enjoy more of your life.
Right.
But he brings up this great point that the reason you're feeling so overwhelmed, when your mother was dying, to do simple things that you should like think, well, they should be compartmentalized. Like, why would my mother dying in the grief of that be affecting my ability to cook or whatever?
Yeah.
That seems like a silly thing, except that sometimes I think we don't give ourselves enough grace there, because what is happening, and he mentions this in the book, the average human has about 6,000 thoughts a day.
Wow.
And you're thinking all these thoughts, but the ones that are more emotional are more demanding of your cognitive attention, like your cognition. They're taking up more space. So if you can only think about 6,000 thoughts in a day, but the ones that are highly emotional and kind of on fire are they're pushing out the ones that other thoughts that you have or that you need to be thinking about, which is why you can't really concentrate on a whole bunch of things at one time. Your brain only has so much capacity to deal with it. Your emotions only have so much capacity. Your body only has so much capacity. So whenever something is really taxing that capacity, the other things go by the wayside a
Sure.
little bit. They get shoved to the margins.
You just don't have
Yeah.
the whatever, you know, the virtue
Yeah.
to be giving in all of these areas when you're so maxed out.
Yeah. And it causes
Mm-hmm.
you to feel cloudy. Like
Right.
when you're really kind of maxed out,
Mm-hmm.
what I was talking about, like I think I hit my cap. You know, when you're maxed out, you're like start to get cloudy. You're not really thinking clearly. You're
Right.
kind of like, and because of it, when you continue to work past that, you actually put yourself at a deficit because
yeah, you go backwards, you ruin things.
you can get to a point where you ruin things, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But it's like you just aren't thinking very clearly, which means you're making poor choices, which means you're not efficient and not really like having the best judgment. And so it's not good to be at that capacity.
Right. And here's the thing that I realized about myself when it comes to things that are really emotionally overwhelming, right? I was tempted to sleep. And I think that's, I remember listening to a friend of mine, and she was saying, I mean, she was going through the worst divorce, marriage, like the guy, I mean, he's really, really a monster. And her comment was, all I feel is tired and hungry. And her, like, and it was a thing where she was saying like, I need to rest from this. And my body just like wants to sleep. And a lot of times with depression that happens. And what I'm getting at with the whole Pepsi idea is like, that's not going to be very restful because that's not the type of rest that you need. Right. And so,
you need all the emotional chaos.
Yes. And so for me, when my mom died, what I found, if I was just, instinctively acting, I painted the side of the house. I kind of fixed everything around. And a lot of time, and I remember listening to a friend of mine talk about a friend of his whose husband died. And he said all she did was paint and it just healed her. Right? She didn't sleep. She just was like, brain off, paint,
Yeah.
And I can literally disconnect because this is easier. This is more controllable. And that's what I guess what I'm getting at is there's this art to rest. There's this art to play that you sort of have to get to know yourself and you have to understand situations. And quite honestly, it's a bit challenging.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It is to find that balance. And
right.
I remember when you listened to that podcast, you came in and you were like, you came in from the shop and you were like, she keeps saying that it's like,
well, okay, let me just say, what she was saying is like, you should be able to access rest anytime you want. And I was initially very excited about this thought. I was like, yeah. And then I started thinking about like, that doesn't work. Actually, it doesn't work for me.
To access rest, just to decide to do something restful in the middle of everything.
If I like have a job that I'm hired to do, right? I can't go snowboarding during the day. Because what'll happen is I'll be working on a job and I'll be thinking, okay, I need to get this done so that I can rest, right? But let's just say, well, I feel tired and I don't feel like finishing it right now. So what I do is I would go snowboarding or I'd go motocross riding. And then I wouldn't feel restful because when I'm done with that, I'm just doing a different type of work. I'm doing an emotional and intellectual work going, oh, I don't know if I can meet that deadline now. I don't know if I'm going to actually come through. I put it off for so long. Now I don't. And so I can't just, I guess what I heard her say wasn't necessarily that you should be able to access rest. It's you should just believe in entitled rest. And I'm like, I don't think I'm entitled to rest day to day.
Yeah. I actually made a little graphic.
You did not make a graphic. Okay.
Because if we want balance.
That's so rad.
Right? Like if we want balance. Okay, yeah,
here, hold that up a little bit. Let me see.
If we want a balanced life, is that.
Here, turn it toward the camera. That way, okay, yeah.
If we want a balanced life, like if we want work, rest, balance, then whenever we are playing too much and working too little, what happens is not that we actually feel rested.
Right.
we actually start to feel restless.
Ooh. Oh, come on.
Because entitled play,
Yeah.
where you haven't actually done anything, like you're saying, that whatever wasn't accomplished to satisfy what you needed to do for work,
Oh, man.
it's still just working in the background. It's all those unclosed closure loops that need to happen where you're like, I'm still working, but now I'm playing too. And basically now I'm just getting restless.
I feel really restless when I haven't been productive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I feel really restless when I know that there's something that I'm responsible for and I'm not pulling it off.
Yes. And whereas if you were balanced, right? If you had work and rest balanced, you would feel like you had earned your play.
And I can't get away from the idea of earning my play.
Yeah. Like, I mean, that's when you get satisfaction. That's when you feel like a job well done, that was finished. And so.
And okay, so here's the other part of this is that I know that this comes from a deep inner construct. I know that it comes from these types of things. And I'm not, but they work for me, right? The whole system that I've understood and learned of earned play really works. And I love grace. I love unconditional love. I love, those ideas of like freely accessing peace. And I know that I have everything it takes right now to generate a moment of happiness in me. I do.
Sure.
Like I get all of that. But what I find, I guess, interesting is that, we were talking about the Bible earlier. Even if you look at like the creation story that we were brought up under, it's like God worked for 6 days. And then what did he do? He rested, he stopped, right? And he didn't say like, oh, whew, I'm super tired. I'm glad that's over. He didn't say any of that. What he did say is he goes, this is good.
Sure.
This is really good. And I don't think I can rest until I say that. Like I say to myself, you know what? I'm satisfied. Like if I'm satisfied in my work, I can rest.
Yeah.
And there's all this rhetoric out there that you're not good enough. You don't have enough. You haven't worked hard enough. You aren't producing enough. And all of these types of things. And we're, as a society, we are fighting that.
Yes.
And so you have to come into an understanding of what is enough. And you have to have just a basic concept of, you know what, Kris Carmody is enough. I love the way I'm created, all of these kinds of things. But it's not lost on work.
Yeah. You still have to produce, you still have to work.
And you still have to feel satisfied with what you're doing.
Yeah. No one gets away from that. Like you're going to have to work.
Yes.
Whether that is for someone, for yourself, either way, life is work.
So here's my question to you.
Mm-hmm.
Super high cap, you, right? Very productive. You said, I've kind of reached my limit. I want to know, give me a trick, give me an idea, give me a concept where you can say, you know what? Okay, I'm going to rest now. Okay, I'm going to play now. What have you done in order to be able to give yourself that vital time of rejuvenation? What do you do?
Well, I don't think I've been doing it because I've been letting things spill over. And this is, like when we started and I said, like, I think for the first time in my life, I really feel like I'm at my cap because I'm doing so many different projects and it's just kind of eating my lunch a little bit. So reading the book Effortless actually was helpful to me because one of the things he recommends that I do, I'm a list person. Every day I have a list of things.
It's the way you function. It's very good for you. It works.
It works. The problem is my list has gotten so huge that there is no way in hell it is going to get ticked off for even just the things that I've scheduled for that day.
Right.
I find that I'm carrying half of my list into the next day and the next day and the next day. And it feels that is making me cloudy, which makes me feel tired and makes me feel restless. And I don't feel like I'm earning my rest and I can't feel like I'm earning my rest because what I have hasn't been completed. So he brings up a great point, and I have been taking this to heart. Like I have been really revising my list and saying, okay, Charity, I know that you want to believe you can do all this in the day, but how about we actually just underperform in your mind for a minute? And
yeah, but wouldn't that make you feel restless? Doesn't that basically go like, I'm just not enough, so I guess
no, it actually, I feel like I just have been paring down my list and saying like, and he had these great questions like, will I feel satisfied if I get these things done today? So he has this thing where he calls it like a daily, like getting done list, or I can't remember what he calls it, but basically like to do today list and then to do this week. He says, what should be on that list is, will I feel satisfied if I get these things done? Will I feel like I've earned my rest? And then also like, will I not be able to really rest if I don't get this done? Then it should probably go on the list and I should probably work until I've done it and then actually make myself rest, like, or play, like remove that. And I've been redoing my list a little bit, which means I am not actually getting less done, but I feel like I'm getting less done because my list is smaller.
Wow.
But it's helping me go, okay, this day is doable. These things are doable because it's a smaller list. I feel like I could accomplish it. I feel like I have something to look forward to be able to rest at the end of the day or the end of the, on the weekend. And then also it helps me get things started because there is this dynamic of if things seem really overwhelming and your list is really too long of things you need to do and all this work, you won't even start because you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
I just want to sleep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Either way, you're going to feel that restless, like this work it's spilling over into playtime. It's spilling over into rest. And now I can't.
And here's the thing that I've noticed about you as you're coming into this is that I noticed that you are putting play or rest at a higher value because you do value productivity.
I think that's so true. And we will talk about this, like as we're aging, we're realizing our time period that we can have really concerted all in effort and work time is getting shorter. Like our brains kind of shut off about 4 or 5, where we can't just keep working into the night like we used to. But we also get up really early. So we've just realized like, okay, we're really productive, more productive than we've ever been, but our time period's shorter, which means we have to plan accordingly. Like I already know, like I'm going to be able to pay attention for 5 hours and then forget it.
And we have the ability to play more.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, when you're young, you don't have any money, you don't have any time,
Right.
and it's like, well, we just, I got to eat, so I got to keep working.
Yeah.
And now we have sort of the opportunity to play more than we ever have. And not only that, but we're coming into much more of a self-aware state where I know that, oh yeah, in order for me to really be creative, to have creative juices flowing and feel like I want to produce and work on something, I've got to play.
Yeah, I think there's just an awareness that that's really an important piece. And it's easier because we don't have kids and stuff at home anymore. But what do you do if because I was thinking back to like right now I can adjust my lists.
Sure.
When the kids were little and like they required so much time or when all that, like what options do you have if you don't have that? What if you're working 3 jobs and you can't, it doesn't matter what you want to do. If you want to play, you can't do that.
Well, I would say to further your point, I still have time. Well, I'm an Alaskan. And so when I go to Alaska and I'm working on developing our property, I know that there's a very finite time that I get to work because the sun's going to go down, the heat's going to be turned off, the lights are going to be turned out, and it's going to be like, you got to get out of here.
Right.
Right. And so you have a deadline, right? You have a push to get something done. And so for me, I know that it's a seasonal thing. I know rest is coming.
Right. But what if you don't have rest coming?
And my thing is, I would say you have to build that into your life. You have to know, just like you're doing with your lists, what you're saying is rest is coming. Like I'm going to take these 3 things off the list because I value rest, because I know that I'm going to be able to have it and it's essential, and I'll be rejuvenated and it'll be fun and I'll be able to come back to this later. Like we'll have this, work time, this conversation later. I'm allowed to come back.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah. I just want to acknowledge that for some people, because of the situation they're in, if they're working tons of jobs and they get home and they're barely able to sleep, I mean, this is a really hard time and it's a hard season, and not everybody gets to choose play right now, even if they were giving it their best. So I just want to acknowledge that. I don't have an answer for that. I'm just saying that's a thing for a lot of people.
And I think for me, if I feel like I'm cheating, let me just back up. I spent a lot of my life feeling really guilty about resting.
Yeah.
Like,
because of the way we were raised, right?
Feeling really guilty about play. In fact, it was funny because this summer, my son Cole and I are developing the back half of the property and stuff. And he said to me, or I did rock stacking, when no one was looking. And but what I did was drill holes in rocks and put rebar. And so I had all these crazy shapes and stuff. And then I had like some rocks that I had, that I had gathered that were the perfect shape and stuff. And there was a tile saw out there and I was cutting rocks in half and stuff like that. Totally screwing off. Like we were trying to build this house in the middle of the summer. And I was telling Cole, he was laughing because I was like, yeah, sometimes I sneak off and do these total
build rock structures
for no reason. Right. And he was just laughing so hard. He's like, you have to sneak off to do that? And I'm like, yeah, I kind of.
Not because anybody else was saying that.
No.
Because you wouldn't.
It's all self-imposed.
Yeah.
It's all like, I feel like I need to be productive. I have this deadline. I have this thing I'm trying to do. And like, this isn't getting me to that, to that deadline.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm saying is what I'm coming into, and I think both of us are really coming into, is this idea that if I don't rest, the deadline's blown anyways. I'll probably start working backward. I'll probably start making so many mistakes in whatever I'm doing that it's worse than if I didn't sneak off and cut rocks.
So there's a law, an economical law, like what you're talking about, of the law of diminishing returns, where it's like there comes a point when the investment is going to reap what you need it to reap. But then if you overinvest, it's going to not return near as much. For instance, I think in that book, he references like you could, if you're a writer, you could write maybe 3 pages in a half an hour and 4 pages in, 2 hours.
Yes.
So at that point, your effort is diminished. And then there comes a point when actually your effort is negative. You're going back to fix those papers so much that you ruin the whole thing.
How many times have you worked exhausted and ruined something?
Totally.
It's like, stop working on that for a little while. Like,
so
you need to go play.
Yeah. But then you brought up this other piece, and actually I made another little graphic.
You did not.
Because we were like, well, what's the difference between when work and play kind of what makes them one, work and one play?
Because here, okay, so to double down on what you're asking is my play is another person's work, right? My play is very active. My most restful state is sort of putzing around.
Yes.
Until 10:30 at night, right? And which is taxing for other people. Right?
I wouldn't consider that play.
Right. I would consider it play. I would consider it very restful.
Yes.
So, and this is just kind of coming online now as we were talking, over this last week about this idea.
Well, and I want to bring up another thing that we've discovered about you.
Okay.
And that we've discovered about the artists in our family. So this is just my own theory.
Go.
When you're dealing with really creative people and people who kind of create for maybe their work, or they just create, they're making things like you, like Olivia, like Cole, like when you're a creative person like that, for some reason, and particularly you and our daughter, it's like, if I push at all on that thing you're playing with, that thing you're creating, like if I say things like, so when are you going to have that done? Or do you think that you should market that a certain way? Or
we
so
could sell 10 of those.
What's your plan for that? Like, as soon as I start talking anything with boundaries and parameters, you both totally shut down. It's like, you don't want to do that anymore.
Oh, you ruin it for me.
It's almost like you reverse it. I ruin it for you. And I was always like, why do they react that way? Like, what is it? Like, surely they want somebody who's going to market that, or they want accountability and timelines, or I don't know. Surely this is helpful. And then I realized,
which is kind of playful for you.
Oh, that is my play. I'm like, hey, my idea of creating is figuring out how we're going to sell that.
Let's systematize it. How fun.
Right. But the point is that the reason I think that you guys both shut down as soon as those things are happening, when your play turns into work, which you have a visceral reaction to.
Yes. And many people don't understand that dynamic.
Right. But I see it. I have seen it with my eyes for 28 years and our daughter's whole life, is that when someone is creating and they're in play mode, as soon as work mode is introduced, by setting a boundary, a deadline, anything where there's an external component imposed on play, it becomes work.
Yes, 100%. And I finally understood the key between work and play. And it is an external control. Whether it is a deadline, whether it is an amount, whether it is a certain look, whether any of that external control, especially deadline, it becomes work.
Yes. And once I kind of like, because we just came online with that, where I was like, oh my God, I know why now, why that's occurring, why the rejection, why the reaction to deadlines. Is because all of a sudden it makes it work. It takes it out of the play category and makes it work.
Absolutely.
And so we talked about that. And that's what this is about. It's like the difference between work and play. And you can ask yourself, like, is this work or is this play? Especially if you're like in the creative field for work. And something feels playful for work. You get to do something you love. I mean, everybody always talks about like, I get to do what I love for a living. That's awesome. But sometimes that is going to feel like play. And sometimes that's going to feel like work.
Yes. I mean, to do something you love for a living isn't play. It's work. It's work.
And it's work.
What I would call enjoyable work.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with enjoyable work. But you have to learn to rest. You have to learn to play, even for your enjoyable work to be sustainable.
Yes.
Seriously.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think the things we came up with, like the differentiations, because we actually did sit down, we're like, okay, wait, why is this play in our life and this is work? Or, the difference between, and we decided like, basically, if it's flexible, if it feels like flexible and you can just explore your curiosity and, just kind of do your own thing and no one's telling you have to do it. You're not telling yourself you have to do it. You really get to explore. That feels like play.
That's especially restful and playful.
Yes. Yeah. Whereas if it has like these requirements on it, whether they're self-imposed or, but even if the requirement feels like it's coming from outside of you, like I know I have to make that amount of money or whatever. If it feels required, then all of a sudden it kind of goes into the work category.
Right.
And you need to look at the balance.
Even if it's enjoyable work.
Yeah.
It's still
work. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we talked about how one is like investing.
Yeah.
And one is like spending.
Oh my goodness. Dude, I could talk about this concept of investment and spending till the cows come home. Here's one. Can I try one on you?
Yeah.
There are people whom you invest time with, and there are people whom you spend time with.
So true.
People you walk away, a relationship or a conversation you walk away from where you feel like you have to recover is someone that you just spent time with. And it's not bad. It's just you have to understand that about that person.
Well, wouldn't that be in someone you were investing in because it was work, and so you have to recover from that?
Yeah, true.
Work you have to recover from.
But it's going somewhere, right? Like
Yes.
that relationship is going somewhere.
Yeah.
Where if you're just spending time, you have to understand, okay, this is going to cost me something. This is going to be, this is going to be something that I'm not necessarily ever going to see the fruit of, but it's it's a needed thing. It's the in-laws thing or something, or like, the whole thing of like, not really going to go anywhere, but I got to be nice. I got to show up to the dinner. You're going to spend time.
Well, I would think of that as like invested time. I would kind of see it the opposite.
That's so funny.
You're investing the time in that relationship because you need it. But spending time for me would feel like I'm spending time with whoever I get to and want to spend time with. And not because I need anything from them but just simply for the joy of being around them.
Right. And that's why I feel, to me, this is tangential, but I think it's a good point, is I think of time and money almost the same. Because if you spend money that you haven't really earned, you go into debt.
And you get that entitled rest where it's like, you're not really going to rest. You're going to get restless because you didn't earn you don't have the satisfaction of a job well done in order to earn that rest.
Right. And time does the exact same thing. If you're screwing off, like if you're just dorking around when you know you have all of these responsibilities, you're going to have to pay for that later.
Yeah.
It's going to be like a time, you're going to have to do that task even under a heavier load later.
Yeah, you're in debt to the...
It's a time debt thing,
yes,
right?
Totally.
So the dynamic between, am I spending time, am I spending money, or am I investing time and I'm investing money? That is a thing that is, there's an art to understanding that.
Yeah. And being able to assess that.
That's such a good point.
We talked about how work, and I feel like we've already discussed this, but work really feels like there's some external reason.
Which is not bad.
Or responsibility as to why you're doing it, making money, an obligation, duty, whatever.
There are such things as deadlines. I know that I will never, ever, ever get away from a life that doesn't have deadlines.
Exactly.
I will always have deadlines, which means everything's going to die if I don't cross that line by this time.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that there's some health to that. There's a healthy way to be like, oh, I can meet deadlines, and maybe I should set some deadlines and not just be, flaky.
Yeah.
Or whimsical for the rest of my life.
Right.
That's being productive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. And whereas play feels like it's this internal thing. You're doing it because, like we said, out of curiosity or joy or whatever.
It's coming out of you. It's totally, yes.
Which is just this duty and joy are really just the same idea.
Absolutely.
So sometimes it might be that we just need to put things in a different category.
Right.
Like we might need to find elements of play to add to our work, but we still I feel like it's actually healthy to have a very distinct line between the two. And understand when they're bleeding over and how that makes for a frustrated person and a frustrated life.
Yeah.
I'm feeling capped out because I have let work bleed too much into play, and I'm not letting myself actually complete things to be able to rest. And I'm not setting clear enough boundaries on my rest time and not bringing any work into it, even though I love what I do. So it's just that awareness that you can bring online and say, like, what is this work or play? And if I'm looking at my life and I'm feeling really overworked, then I need to go, okay, what would be playful? And does it have those criteria?
Yes.
Is it flexible? Is no one else going to tell me how to spend it? Am I going to be able to do this and let it be joyful with no elements of work to it?
It's that I think is so key for the rejuvenation process.
Yes.
Is you have to put money in the bank, water in or gas in the tank. And
work, what I mean is work is not the same as labor, because oftentimes play is laborsome.
Like, oh, absolutely.
Like your version of play, of building something that requires doing something, it requires labor, but it's playful labor for you because it doesn't have those work parameters around it. It's that true creation.
And it's so funny how I'm sensing that you and I look at the spend invest totally different, because when I'm playing, I feel like I'm investing, and when I'm working, I feel like I'm spending.
Wow. Yes, we see them exactly opposite.
Right. And that is a more fresh idea for me.
Wow.
Yeah, like play is literally putting money in the bank. It's literally putting energy on the grid. It's putting gas in the tank so that I can feel really good about meeting deadlines, or I feel really good about,
Yeah, and I think like at the core of my being, view play as wasteful.
It's spending.
It's spending, and that I should really look at that.
But I don't know that that's bad. I mean, I don't know. I think that if there's something to it,
Well, I think
there's a balance,
to it, right?
Yeah.
But I need to explore that. Like, do I fundamentally think playing is wrong?
Exactly. And my thing with me is I've just made a vow, and it's relatively recent, that I'm not going to feel guilty for playing. I'm not going to feel guilty for resting. But in order for me to do that, I have to really check whether it's just, I'm just going to be entitled to F off. Or if it's a thing like, no, I'm so satisfied in my work, and I'm so satisfied with kind of who I've become, and like, where I'm at in life, and, in my relationships and stuff like that, that guess what? I get to go cut rocks.
Yeah.
Or I get to go make a leather bag that I'm never going to sell.
Yeah.
Like, it's just going to be fun. Or I'm going to go learn a scale on the guitar that I'm never going to play for anybody ever. You know what I mean? So anyway.
I love that. Work hard, play hard.
Work hard, play hard. I think it's a beautiful concept.
It is.
Wait, babe, wait. How do we end this?
By saying thank you.
Okay, you guys are awesome. Thank you. There's nothing more encouraging than you hitting that like button and commenting.
And don't forget to subscribe.
And I know there's more. You have a list. Might as well go down the list.
Right. Okay. Watch the video of this podcast on our Beautiful Step YouTube channel or on our website, where you can actually download transcripts and show notes of the episode. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
If today's episode made your together even better, tell someone.
Okay, now.
Right now.
Today.
Okay.
You can take one step.
It's just one step
Toward the beautiful relationship you want in your life.
You got this.